We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live.
Friends and neighbors. I don't know. Do we have anything to talk about? The last episode I did, I said some things that just aged like milk. I openly scoffed at Austin's chances of getting the NHL. Uh, and I said, oh, you know what? There's no movement on Houston getting the NHL. And I'm going to learn to just be okay with being a fan of the Bulls, which, I'm still a fan of the Bulls. And I'm just gonna be a fan of the smaller team, and I'm not even gonna worry. I even titled, "I'm not worried about NHL expansion." And then the news broke, and I've gone through like 2 tubs of ulcer medication now, and it's gonna be a long 6 months. So rather than me just and I got some demographics and did some number crunching because I'm just wired that way. But I wanted to bring someone on that you probably have seen on ESPN's podcast and some other areas. But I'm bringing in Jennifer Streeter. She is a hockey reporter with On SI at Sports Illustrated and the Sporting News, and she's the top Houston Bulls insider. Let's get her perspective on some things, and also let's hear from y'all. And thanks for showing up. I gotta tell you, before the show starts on these live streams, when my view numbers go up and down while the countdown's happening, I become a wreck. So thanks for showing out, y'all. So Jenny.
Hi. Hi, friend. It is so good to be on with you. I'm excited. We talk all the time, like in person and at all these Houston hockey events we're on. So it's cool to actually be like in kind of like a work setting, like on your podcast with you.
I'm glad you came in because you're everywhere, and I'm not sure if I would have talked to me if I were you, but because you're everywhere. So let's just right to it if we could, because I've had this thought kicking around in my head, which is, it's bizarre to me, and I hate that Houston and Austin are pitted up against each other. And my thought is, when the first time something goes wrong with whichever team gets placed, either Houston or Austin, I remember the first year of the IHL Arrows, they had an issue with the ice for one of the games, and it had to be postponed. And I'm just thinking, if something like that happens, or the first game that's not a sellout, it's going to be, oh, should have gone to the other place. And it just undermines the team before they even get started. So why do this? Why publicly announce that, hey, these are the 2 cities competing?
I mean, that's a really good opening question. I will say, obviously, the topic of Houston being considered for a team by the NHL, that's nothing new. That's something that's been in the talks for years. Austin is fairly newer, and pitting those 2 Texas cities against each other is a fairly new concept. From what I understand, Houston has been in talks for a very long time about having the team, but then when the Board of Governors meeting happened on June 23rd or June 22nd, I'm drawing a blank on which of those dates it was off the top of my head. Austin had then entered into the conversation at the Board of Governors meeting when they were discussing kind of what's going to be the location for this 33rd team. So that's why that happened. As for it being a bad thing about in the future of whether oh, well, if Houston gets the team and something goes wrong while it's there, people are just going to say it should have been in Austin, and vice versa. I don't know if I can say I agree with that. I feel like that's not a new concept. In the NHL, there's already currently 32 teams. And when something, for instance, goes wrong with the New York Rangers, there are New York residents who could be, well, I'm just going to go watch the Islanders. I'm just going to go watch the Devils games. And that's something that doesn't, everyone finds their team, everyone finds their niche. So I'm sure in the first few years of whichever city gets the expansion, that's bound to happen. But I don't see it being too big of a problem for the league in the future.
Okay, fair enough. And it's interesting that you mentioned the Rangers and the Islanders, and we could even throw the Devils in there. Um, you have that little triangle of who are you going to be a fan of, depending on how you were raised, where you live, who's playing well that particular season. Could we have a situation like that? How feasible would both cities coming into the league be?
Like both Austin and Houston having a team eventually? Well, I mean, that's not a new concept. You know, in California, they have as many
Right.
teams as they have, and in New York, they have as many teams as they have. However, I do think, you know, it's worth mentioning that the Dallas Stars obviously do exist. So,
Mhm.
I can't say I would see it automatically being like if Houston gets it, Austin would be something that would be considered immediately. I think in the media release, and I know this is something you're going to ask me about later just because we've already discussed it, but like there's other cities that are further along in expansions as well. Not further along than Texas, but like for instance, if Houston gets the team, then I see Atlanta and Arizona being further along than Austin because Friedkin is only putting up the money for one city. Like it's going to be either or, it's not both. So I could see one city getting the nod like much later on, but they would need another person who would be willing to put up billions
Yeah.
of dollars.
Yeah. Okay. So about those billions of dollars,
Right.
it's
Yes.
3.5 billion.
It is $3.5 billion because everything is bigger than better in Texas, clearly. Because,
Yeah.
you know, when I was looking at like the numbers for other recent um, expansion teams and other, you know, other numbers that were put up to get those teams, 3.5 billion is easily the highest. So definitely everything is bigger and better in Texas.
Yeah. And you would have to think that they're not going to stop at 33. That just makes no sense.
Mhm.
And they're not even going to stop at 34. So you would think whatever amount team 35 and 36 is going to be, and it's not going to be as attractive of a market, but anyway, that's someone else's problem. So this breaks down. I know a percentage of this is earmarked for an arena, and you would think probably a practice facility and maybe a market area. Do you know what the breakdown of the cost is between expansion fee and everything else?
So what I do know is what I'm going to read you exactly from the media release. So I'm going to read that
Oh,
now.
oh, I must
It
have
would
missed it. All right.
approximately a 3.5 billion investment made by the family, which is the Friedkin family, which includes the expansion fee that goes to the NHL and the cost of building a new arena. So we don't have the breakdown of how much of the 3.5 billion dollars is going to what, but we do know that that 3.5 billion does include the expansion fee that goes to the league and the cost of building the new arena.
Okay. So 3.5 billion for somewhere in Texas. I was emotionally ready to just hate on Atlanta as the league dangled a franchise. Oh, who's going to get it first? Who starts playing 2030 as opposed to 32 or whatever? This surprised me. Was Atlanta really that far behind?
It wasn't that they were that far behind. So in the media release, when they announced Austin and Houston as the two teams being considered, both Atlanta and Arizona were mentioned in the said media release. So in the Board of Governors meeting where they discussed Houston versus Austin and went public with all of this, in that same meeting, Atlanta and Arizona were also discussed and were on the table as expansion markets potentially to be pursued. However, the Friedkins family's pursuit, so that $3.5 billion they're willing to put up, that is money that they are willing to put up in Texas, which means the expansion efforts that are currently going on are for Texas by them. So that thus means that like the expansion efforts in Texas are further along. However, Commissioner Bettman did say this does not rule out or rule in Atlanta or Arizona. It just means they're on a slightly different path to expansion. And in the media release, he did say, you know, this is just what I'm saying now. He like was very transparent where he was like, tomorrow we could all wake up and they could say, you know what, like Atlanta and Arizona, we want to do the same thing that we're doing in Texas. So I think to answer your question, it's really just that the Friedkin family and their $3.5 billion are in, and they're in for Texas, whereas Atlanta and Arizona are still in the works.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So if we're talking Houston and Austin. And by the way, I hate the idea that we're pitted against each other, because social media is just, Houston's, we'll talk about everything. Actually, no, I'll say it because I said it to you a couple of days ago. The perception of Houston is that Houston is gray and Austin is sexy. And then we get all the Austinites that are piling on with that perception. And then Houston's like, oh, well, Austin is full of undesirables. I absolutely hate that we're being pitted against each other, but let's compare the two potential markets. And there has been speculation that Austin finds itself where Houston has found itself for many years, just leverage on a larger city. And I'll be honest with you, if that's true, I don't hate watching it happen to someone else after, Edmonton and Pittsburgh and everyone else use Houston for leverage. Do you think that's what's happening here?
I have heard from a few sources that they feel that that's what the league's doing, that they wouldn't be surprised if that's what the league's doing. I've heard that, oh, well, we wouldn't be surprised if the league is just saying that Austin is an option to try and get everything they want out of Houston, because people have to remember sports are businesses now. Like, sports is billion-dollar, like, this is like billion-dollar industries. These teams we're talking millions, billions of dollars, and sports has very much devolved into sort of being a little bit of like a political landscape in the sense of the business realm. So I have heard from a few sources that they do feel like the league is kind of, oh, well, if we don't get everything we want out of the new arena, if we don't get all the financial backing we want, then we'll just pursue our other Texas expansion in Austin. I've heard that. However, I don't know if I can necessarily say that's like 100% true. Like, Houston by far has the better media market numbers. It has, bigger population, but Austin, like, hockey is proven to work in Austin. The Texas Stars are currently there. And one set of numbers that I found really interesting that like is in Houston's favors, but I also found doesn't look too bad for Austin, is I compared the USA Hockey enrollment numbers per city. And the Houston metro population is about 7.7 million. The Austin metro population is about 2.7 million. Despite that huge population difference, the USA Hockey enrollment numbers in Houston is about 2,500, whereas the USA Hockey enrollment numbers in Austin is 2,000. So that's only a difference of 500, despite there being, in the metro population, a difference in millions. So I have heard that that there are people who think Austin is being used for leverage against Houston. However, I don't think it's fair to completely rule out Austin either, because of their history with hockey.
Yeah, I don't either. There's lots of upside, and I do want to go through some numbers that I pulled up also here in a bit, but I would also think that those USA Hockey numbers would change with Houston getting more ice.
Yes, and they definitely will, and that's something that's obviously we both know is being pursued. And I also think you could argue that with the amount of hockey that is coming to Houston guaranteed, even without NHL entering into the picture, the ECHL and the NAHL, like, those numbers will rise when, kids go to the games and say like, hey, I want to do that. So I do think those numbers for Houston will rise, but those are the numbers that are current.
Yeah. Yeah, let's save the demographics for last here. I heard, and I don't know if it was with you, I've been hearing a lot of things. I went back, I tried to find this, and I can't now. It was either you on ESPN or on 610, or maybe
I love that we can say that, by the way, me on ESPN. That was like such a dream. Like, when that was like my ESPN debut. So I love that we can say that.
Isn't it great? But I've been just banging my fist on the desk for a while. These guys won't talk hockey. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is. It's always the Texans, and they could be the worst team in the league in the off season, and it's still just all they ever talk about is Texans. And now they're talking hockey, and they're talking to you, and just it's beautiful. I might actually have to remember I have an AM in my car now, but wherever I heard it, someone mentioned we might need to be concerned that the league just won't expand at all, that 32 teams is enough. I can't imagine anyone that's actually a decision maker is saying, nah, forget all those billions of dollars. But is there a concern that the league won't expand and they're just floating a trial balloon?
So I think what the concern is first of all, there's no concern that the NHL is probably just going to stick to 32 teams. I think it's very clear that in the media release I have of them saying they're considering Austin and Houston and them also willing to name Atlanta and Arizona, I think it's clear to everyone that the NHL is going to eventually expand. I think what the concern you're talking about is, it is worth mentioning that like in the media release and in the NHL, the languages that's being used is they are exploring expansion opportunities. Nowhere in the media release did it say it's guaranteed that this is going to happen. However, that would be highly unusual for the NHL to put out a public release and for all of this to go public, that they are narrowing it down in between two Texas cities, and for there to be an offer of $3.5 billion on the table that would eventually, go away. I think something very extreme would have to happen for it not to come through. But I mean, it is worth mentioning that the language that is used is that they're exploring the opportunity. It's never was it said like, we will be having a 33rd team and it will be either in Houston or Austin, but I don't think there's a concern about it not happening.
Yeah, it's unusual for Bettman to be this direct about anything. He's been saying, well, we're not in expansion mode or whatever his language was, but it's like, yeah, but there's wiggle room in that statement. And for him to come out and name two cities is really unusual for him. Okay. I want to ask you a question I already know the answer to, but people don't listen to me when I say it. So we'll see if the On SI with Sports Illustrated and Sporting News reporter can get people to stop asking me this. Is Tilman involved in this at all?
No. Tilman is out. Dan Friedkin, CEO of the Friedkin Group, head of the Friedkin family, is the guy. Tilman is out.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this into a tone I could just play on my phone and just play for people, because I had this conversation the other day. I'm like, yeah, Tillman's not involved. But if he is, no, he's not though. But if he is, I'm like, okay, all right, fine.
Well, what I will say is like Michael Shapiro of the Cron did ask him for comment, and Tilman did say that like if the NHL does come, he would be supportive of them being like a temporary resident in the Toyota Center. But everything I've heard like from the league and everything like that is Friedkin. Like Friedkin's their guy. There is no Fertitta like in the picture.
Right. And I can't imagine the league would be okay with anything temporary, especially after Phoenix. And I know it's a different situation, but I think that word is just forbidden now with the NHL. Nothing temporary. Let's have all our ducks in a row before we do anything. Okay. So you mentioned this earlier. Everything's happening at once. We've had this hockey desert since 2013, and now we got junior hockey, and then this NHL announcement, and kind of lost in all of that is the ECHL with blue line slap shot. So it's a concern I have, and I don't know if you looked at what other cities are doing, but can Houston go from nothing to all of a sudden 3 hockey teams and support all 3? What's it like in other Sunbelt towns?
I'm not sure what it's like in other Sunbelt towns. Like, I don't know how much I can speak to that, but I definitely think they can, especially because of where the timeline is at with each team. So the Houston Bulls, they already have their head coach and players are going to arrive in August. So that's whatever year we're currently in. That's 2026. Okay. So that's happening immediately. That is, the Houston Bulls are here next month, and they get underway immediately. The ECHL team with Blue Line Slapshot LLC, that is coming in the next 2 years. He said it's set to arrive as early as 2028 to 29. I'm like remembering my phone conversation I had with him with Michelle Petit last week. They're coming 2028 to 29. So like when you look at the spacing, it's like Houston will have from 2026 to 2028 to kind of get acclimated to like going to the Houston Bulls game and seeing all of that. And then 2028 to 29, ECHL could get here, and that could also be the year that the NHL gets here. So I definitely do think it could also happen. But I think what people forget is that like Houston is like a very spread out city. And when you look at where the Houston Bulls are located, they're in Richmond, which for those who are unfamiliar, that's like Sugarland area. The ECHL team, they're looking at land. I have it right here. Where is it? They're looking at land. Hold on. I believe it's just south of the Woodlands, but it's north of I-45 and just south of the Woodlands. So that's where they're looking. And then, you know, depending on where the NHL is potentially looking to put their new arena, like that could work because of how spread out that is as well.
Okay. Okay. South of the Woodlands is ECHL. Because I remember when Blue Line first formed, it was Woodland Slapshot. So I didn't know what all was going on or where they would actually finally wind up. So, okay. So before I get into the data between Houston and Austin, do you have any thoughts on what fans can do to, you know, someone that doesn't have $3.5 billion to encourage all parties involved, and that's, you know, Houston city government and HCSA and Friedkin and the league and everybody else, that no, the NHL belongs in Houston. And just to use an overused phrase, but an accurate one, to we'll address that here in a second, Jeff. To bring the NHL to Houston, what should us as fans be doing?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think when you look at the deciding factors that the NHL is going to look at in between when deciding between Austin and Houston, aside from the demographics and the specific numbers you and I will get into here in a second, they're going to be looking for two main things. They're going to be looking at, number one, which city will the league make the most money in? Like which city will have the team be more financially successful? Is that Austin or is that Houston? And number two, which city will people show up for hockey? Which city will bring in the most fans to the new arena and to the team? And I think what Houston residents can really do is there is pre-existing hockey in the city. They can support, you know, the NAHL Houston Bulls in their inaugural season. Like I've mentioned, players are going to arrive in August. And then we also have NCAA club teams. You know, UH has a club team and Rice has a club team. So I think for the Houston Bulls in particular, you know, I was talking with Devin, their director of business ops, just the other day, and he straight up told me that NHL investors and the league are going to be looking at them. They're going to be looking at their season ticket sales numbers. They're going to be looking at, you know, their financial numbers. So I think really like just supporting pre-existing hockey here in Houston is huge.
Yeah, I think if they're looking at the season ticket numbers, I think that's going to be a nice data point in our favor. So Jeff in chat asked
Hi, Jeff.
For some clarification
Okay.
about the ECHL arena location. South of the Woodlands on 45, is that what I'm hearing?
Petit said his group is set to buy land north of I-45 and just south of the Woodlands with a purchase agreement expected by the end of 2026.
Well, there you go. Okay. So support the Bulls if we want to make an impression. Support our club teams if we want to make an impression. You know, I went to a UH game, and I gotten used to, because they're the alma mater, so that's who I support. I gotten used to going there and it being empty, and just because life got in the way, I hadn't gone to a game in a while. And then I go to this one game and it's just packed. It's wall to wall people. And I'm like, okay, this is an encouraging sign of things to come. And then I saw some social media posts of Rice hockey, and they're getting people out to the games.
I want to add that, like, when, since we've all made this statement that like supporting pre-existing hockey in Houston is like the best thing that Houston residents can do, to show the NHL that they want the team in Houston over Austin, like when those people are there, like take pictures, take videos of the stands, take videos of the crowds, like post them on social media, like tag the NHL, like tag the people of the league. Like that's something that seems so small but could really end up big.
Yeah, I know how to be obnoxious on social media. So I like this idea. I can absolutely tag the league. Let's see here. Yeah, that's the information we have on the arena location. So if you'll indulge me here, because this is what I do. I just get obsessive and I go down this rabbit hole of things. And that's what I did with comparing Austin to Houston. I had a previous episode where I did hockey math on fair enough. You know what? I'll even put that out. I'll even show that out. There you go. We'll be fair, not a problem. So anyway, but when I compared like what I felt were the top 15 contenders for the next expansion city, I didn't even consider Austin. Didn't even occur to me. And every time I heard a report, oh, someone from Austin met with the league, I just laughed it off. It's like, yeah, that's not happening. New Orleans isn't happening. But now here we are. So I did some of the research here, and Houston's got more Fortune 500 companies. I follow someone, or I follow a couple of hockey channels on YouTube and all that. And what one of the guys I follow says is all you need to do is fill the building, 40 something times a year. And that could be Jeff. Maybe they meant 99, but anyway, we're here. All you gotta do is fill the building. I'm like, no, you don't. Because not only do you have to fill the building, you have to sell the merch. You need corporate sponsorships. It's a lot more than just ticket sales. And the money is from corporate sponsorships. So I'm just looking at the Fortune 500 companies. What other data did I pull up here? Oh yeah, TV market. Houston.
Okay. Also, we have different TV market rankings.
Oh, we do?
I don't know. Yeah, we do. I have via TV market rankings, Houston comes in at number 6. And I have that Austin is number 34.
Oh, that's interesting.
So we are off by exactly one number on each, on each, but I don't think that matters.
Where did this come from? It came from, what, if I pulled up my notes, I could find it, but we're going to move on.
But that's okay.
We're off by 1. Okay.
I will say go back to the TV market real quick.
Yep.
Per an inside source to me, the NHL is wanting their 33rd team added prior to the next television rights negotiations. And and from what I believe, the current US media market deal with the NHL that expires after the 2027 to 28 season, or it expires after the 2028 season. So that's also information to consider, because if that information from that source is true, this TV market rankings, this is huge. This is going to be a real contender this is going to be a real decision maker for the league.
Yeah, I think you're right. Mile High Minor, Austin going to sneak in like they did with MLS. Maybe. I'll point out though that Houston got the MLS prior though.
And the Houston Dash. Shout out the Houston Dash too.
Oh, that's right, the Houston Dash. Very good. Let's see here. People aren't factoring in San Antonio and that people will go to Austin games, especially military transplants. No, I factored it in. I just didn't want to mention it because I'm a homer. But you're absolutely right. There's reason to be concerned about Austin. I think Houston's got the advantage, but I'm also biased. So there we are. This is the one that gets thrown around all the time. And I think you had different math, but this came from the census, but it doesn't matter. Houston's a bigger city, but that's not everything, because then we have the median household income. This is where I start to worry about Austin, and then the demographic trend. Austin's got more people moving to it. But then you start looking at who buys tickets. And this is what I came up with. And I point out the last one because someone kept commenting to me about Houston's demographics and, well, you don't have hockey demographics anymore. It's like, well, okay, but we also have growing populations. So if we look at who is actually buying hockey tickets in every subdivision, and I don't like subdividing America, but this is what we're doing. Houston has not a better percentage of the things that the league is looking for, but larger numbers and who is buying tickets. So
I also want to add in a point that actually, believe it or not, my grandpa made.
Okay.
My grandpa made this point, and he said that when it comes in terms of comparing the populations for Houston and Austin, he was saying how more people from the north, like from typical hockey markets such as like Minnesota and Michigan and people up north, more of those people, if they do migrate, come to Houston rather than going to Austin. Like the Austin population, like people migrate there from like non-traditional hockey markets such as California and things like that. Like my grandpa was saying, he's like, people from up north are more likely, and Houston has more like northerners in our population when compared to Austin.
Indeed. Yeah. I read somewhere, and this is another one of those, oh, where did I read that at? I've been reading and watching so much in the past week, and I'm probably going to start dreaming about stats and everything for NHL cities. But I read somewhere that Houston as a visiting team is more impactful. Like if Houston, like if you're the owner of the Avs and Houston's coming to town, it's a bigger draw than if Austin's coming to town.
Oh my God. And also, like, I was literally in Austin 2 weeks ago with my friend Amanda. Shout out my close friend Amanda. She lives there. I was at a concert in Moody Center. And it's also important to consider, like, Houston is more drivable of a city than Austin is drivable. Like I was driving in Austin and I was like stressed because of like of what driving in Austin is like compared to driving in Houston. I mean, obviously neither are completely pleasant experiences, but like I feel like Houston is more drivable than Austin.
Yeah, that's, mind you, I haven't been to Austin in a couple of years, but yeah, I agree with you. Here's something, if you follow the NHL to Houston account, he posted a version of this, and I went to Hockey DB to find it myself. Let's do this. But an apples to apples, well, never mind. Can I do that? No. There we go. Look at that. An apples to apples comparison of the 4 years that both the Houston Aeros and the Texas Stars were in the league at the same time. And you'll notice that for all 4
Shout out
years,
2011 to 2012.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you could say, well, in that last year, people knew the team were leaving. I didn't know until the latter half of the season. I don't know who got the information or whatever. But yeah, we're far removed from a champion. I'm pointing to it like you can see me. But in 2011, 2012, we're far removed from any championship. We didn't know that the team was leaving, and this is what winds up happening. So at any rate, so that's my data for whatever it's worth. I want to go out on this though, because truer words were never spoken. I truly, I agree. I catch so much hell for going up to see Stars games on social media from time to time and in my commentary, but it's like, look, I want to go to see hockey. I don't want to get on a plane. But I feel like any Houston-Dallas rivalry is contrived, and some people will argue me, but this is what I want, really. I honestly hope NHL decides after research to give both cities a team. Absolutely. hang on a second, and we'll get to that in a second. Let's see here. There we go. Houston now.
Yeah,
Austin.
I like this one.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because when you look at the rate of growth of Austin and all that, why not? So, and I also don't disagree. We're going to go with Mile High Minor again. That maybe the NHL looks at Austin as a combination of Austin, San Antonio, like they do Dallas, Fort Worth. Maybe. Oh, wait a minute.
Is this Devin, like Devin from the
Houston
Bulls?
I know this guy. All right.
Oh my God, yes. You missed the support the Bulls answer. You missed it. Yeah, the question, we can say it again, but
yeah, one of us is repping, but that's okay. We pointed out the necessity of going to support the Bulls. So at any rate, okay, well, I had fun.
We did not talk Toyota Center. If we want to get that in there, we did not talk.
Yeah,
Toyota
we
Center.
should, because it keeps coming up as.
I will say this is the one where we're reversed. Where you were like, the question you keep getting asked, where like you need it to be your ringtone at this point is Fertitta. The question I keep getting asked, where like I need the answer to be the ringtone, is this one.
Okay.
It's like in my mentions every single day, no matter how many times I say it.
Well, damn. If I knew that, I would have pulled up a sound clip. So, but I will paraphrase what Jack Stanfield said when he was on the show. And if there is a man who represents Houston hockey, I would submit that it's him, and I'll rely on his expertise. But he said, he can walk into an arena and tell you if it was built for basketball or hockey, because the hockey arenas are more tower in their seating structure, and the basketball ones are more bowl, and Toyota Center is a bowl. Not only that, here, I'll ask you, why does Toyota Center not work for an incoming NHL team?
I am so glad you.
All right.
I'm so glad you asked. So here's the thing, is what people are forgetting is that the WNBA is coming back to Houston. The WNBA is coming, and they're going to be here, I believe, in 2027. Someone double check me on that, but I think that's the year, or whenever that is. When the WNBA gets here, the WNBA is already confirmed, because they're under Fertitta, that they're going to be at the Toyota Center. So that means that the Toyota Center is officially going to be housing the NBA and the WNBA, and all of the concerts they do, and all of the extra events that they do by 2027. With the league having this like period of 6 months where they're going to decide the cities, and then needing, an additional amount of time to get here. That means that in a hypothetical world, that if the Toyota Center was to be a temporary home or whatever, that means that the Toyota Center would have to house the NBA, the WNBA, the NHL concerts, and extra events at the same time. The only arena in the United States, there's only one city where that is possible, or where that is currently happening, and that is Los Angeles. I am a Houston native. I am so proud to be from here, but Houston is just not the same as Los Angeles. It is completely feasible for the NHL to be like, we do not want to share a facility with the NBA and the WNBA. We want to have our own facility. That is completely reasonable. So that is why the Toyota Center just absolutely does not work. And I've also had people, like, when I pointed that out, I've had people argue with me and be like, the WNBA and the NHL seasons don't overlap. That's not true. NHL, like, preseason starts in September. WNBA runs from May to October. So that means that the WNBA and NHL seasons do overlap for both September and October. So the Toyota Center is just like, it's just too busy. It's just not doable.
Forgive me, but I'm glad this happens to you too, who is a credentialed NHL reporter, because I'll be like, well, no, I've looked into this. I know why. And no, I'm going to argue with you, and I'm misery loving company, I guess. And that it happens to you too. So,
well, to be fair, like, not everyone is a credentialed NHL reporter. Like, not everyone's a credentialed reporter. Not everyone knows that. But also, like, we're not thinking that, like, people don't think of it in the minds of a billionaire. Like, in the minds of normal people, it makes complete sense that there's already that the Toyota Center already exists. It makes complete sense. Why are we building a new arena when the Toyota Center's there? That makes complete and total sense. But if we put ourselves in the mind of a billionaire, which I don't know, I'm not a billionaire. So, but if we were to put ourselves in the minds of a billionaire, like, for a billionaire, this is a great opportunity for a new state-of-the-art facility, for there to be, like, new stuff, for there to be their own home turf, for them to be the main guys on the couch. So, sports is a business. I'll say it again.
Yeah. All right. Good deal. I really appreciate you coming to talk to me, and Chad, I appreciate you jumping in tonight. Where can we find your coverage? You cover it's the Devils and the Kraken, correct?
I cover, like, a lot of teams.
Okay.
So I cover, like, my primary teams that I cover are the New York Rangers, the New York Islanders, the Seattle Kraken, and the New Jersey Devils for On Asai at Sports Illustrated, hockey reporter over there. But then I also cover the NHL in its entirety over at the Sporting News. So you guys can check out my coverage at both the Sporting News and On Asai at Sports Illustrated. I also do a lot of social media work, just because that's where journalism is shifting nowadays. So you guys can wait, that's not right there. You guys can check out my Twitter. It's at Jenny Streeter 3. But yeah, of course, I was so glad to come on. I see you around all the time. I consider you a friend at this point. So yeah, I'd love to do this. So I'll always come on.
I didn't know what I expected when I started the channel. I got obsessed because it's like, why is no one else talking about this rumor I heard 4 months ago about, the NHL or whatever? It's like, well, screw it. I'll just start my own. I am overwhelmed by, and pleasantly surprised by the amount of friendships I made, yourself included. So thank you. I'm so glad. Let's see here. Wait, I just saw my name. So what's up? Is this new location they're looking at placing the new NHL outside that 30-mile radius? I don't know. There was a Houston Press article years and years back that I keep harping on, that there's something about the Toyota Center contract that another arena of that size needs to be X amount of miles away from Toyota Center. And the Houston Press reported it was 30 miles. I've been told that number might not be correct. So, Joe, the short answer is I don't know. I don't know if they're even that far ahead. I don't know if they've talked to Tilman and made an arrangement. You know what we know.
I want to address the Mile High Minor question. Why would NHL want to take a back seat to anyone if they are moving to a city? So here's the thing. I think this is something that I've had a lot of people point out is an edge to Austin over Houston, is that Houston has the amount of professional sports teams that they have in comparison to Austin. That is true. You could 100% look at that. You could 100% say, like, if the NHL goes to Austin, automatically, like, the NHL will be the biggest league in the city. It will be the go-to, like, sporting event. You could 100% say that. However, it is important to mention that on the other side of the coin, what that does mean is that sports are proven to work more in Houston. Professional sports leagues are proven to be successful in Houston, whereas in Austin, they have minor league teams and MLS. So it's both sides of the coin. You could look at that either way. That could be looked at as a positive for Austin, but that could also be looked at as a negative for Austin.
Yeah, I've always said that, well, having these other sports leagues are proof of concept that sports works in our town. Mm-hmm. But you can't deny Nashville's success. You can't deny Vegas's success. You can kind of look at Columbus and go, so yeah, that's it. It's a good question. And I don't know if there is a hard and fast formula, and we're trying to assign a hard and fast, and I'm doing it. I'm pulling up all this demographic data saying, let's find the formula to see, you're okay. Like, why would the NHL want to move into an NBA arena? Yeah, they wouldn't. So,
right.
Yeah.
Because
No,
I think
absolutely.
that's why, like, in the media release, it was put in very early, like at the top of the media releases, both cities require a new arena. Like, not just if we go to Houston, Houston requires a new arena. Not just if we go to Austin, Austin requires a new arena. It was both cities require a new arena.
Yeah, and Moody Center isn't a temporary option either. That I think that's a less.
Well, I have heard from my sources that like it's doable. Like, should they need a temporary home, like Moody can do it, but it would be like the smallest NHL arena that they would like. I've heard that it's possible. Like I've heard
possible.
some people
Okay.
like I've heard some people be like, well, the Moody Center, it's not even equipped to handle ice. And I've heard otherwise. Like I've heard like it is possible, but again, just with the capacity, you know.
God, if I were the league, I'd be scared to death to even consider that after Mueller. And it's not Austin's fault. It's just, the current, pays for the crimes of the ex. That's just how it is. That trauma is already in there. I wouldn't want to do any kind of temporary situation, especially in a college arena. All right. Well, with that, let's do it again. All right. So cover a lot of teams for On SI for Sports Illustrated and the Sporting News and your what is
oh yeah
title?
I don't know if Devin's still in the stream, in the chat, but yeah, I have been given the okay that I can say that I'm the top insider for the Houston Bulls. So yeah,
okay. That's the
my
official
other
title, top insider.
Top insider, yes.
Okay, fair enough.
I guess beat reporter also, but like I prefer top insider because it sounds cooler.
Yeah, because it's the word top in there. All right. So yeah, absolutely. It's more gooder. All right. So friends and neighbors, thanks for joining. Hey, I got something coming up week and a half ish, maybe, that I think you're going to dig. And we're not going to talk about the future, but we'll talk about the past. And I think it'll be fun for everybody. So I'm working on that this week. And Jenny, anything you want to promote other than your SI and your Sporting News?
No, just to the city of Houston. It's an honor to have my boots on the ground here in the city and be able to, cover this potential expansion. I am waiting for comment from the Houston mayor's office. I'm putting in a follow-up email tomorrow, but I am waiting for a comment from the Houston mayor's office on if they're going to be supporting this effort and if they have an official like quote they want to give me or comment. So I guess that's my last thing I want to say.
Yeah, I haven't heard him say one way or the other to anybody. So that's the Sport Authority has, but the mayor's office hasn't. That's a little troubling. All right. Well, friends and neighbors, go see the Bulls. Go wave the flag. Go tag the NHL on social media. And until next time, we out. He's thought.